While gamma radiation studies in the sector have not proven any conclusive evidence, there is the risk that exposure by humans to it can cause them to turn into massive green monstrosities. Furthermore, oh, shut up, Wesley! Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here, and today for the end of March we're going to take a look at a rather unique transformer. We're taking a look at the Autobot scientist Perceptor. Now, Perceptor was released in 1985. He would also be available in 1986. He would be discontinued by 1987, and we did not get a replacement for him. Perceptor functions as a scientist, and to many of us in that generation, we might have wondered why a military force would need a scientist. As after all, they're not a frontline fighter per se. Why would they need a scientist actively involved with them? Thankfully, we have with our current media lots more reasons to explain such a need. As with the many crime shows such as CSI and NCIS have proven, scientists do form an integral part in both criminology and in military investigations. So there is a unique role for Perceptor. Plus, of course, studies of the sciences would help devise how the Transformers were able to not only build spacecraft to fly into space, but also to solve more of the mysteries of spaceflight that remain science fiction here on Earth. At any rate, let's take a good look at Perceptor and take a look at his articulation. And he is quite articulated for a Generation 1 Transformer. He can rotate his arm at the shoulder all the way around. Well, that also depends on which shoulder you have the scope attached, because as you can see here, this one's limited by the scope, but if you decide you want the scope over the left shoulder, or at least out of the way, we move it there out of the way, stay up there, you can see that both arms do rotate completely. That back down here. He does have a joint at the elbow, so you can bend the elbow at a full 90 degrees, either forward, or if you really want to be adventurous, backward. He does have joints here at the hip. It's used predominantly for transforming him, but you can get him out into a full splits. And there is, in this position, he does have a joint at the knee. So you do get quite an amount of posability here out of Perceptor. So very, very impressive. Now let's take a look at how to transform Perceptor. And he is a little bit more complicated than some his normal size. But he is also he also has a bonus transformation too, so we do have that going for him. First step, as always, is to remove his accessories, and we'll set them aside for the moment. Alright, next, I'm going to take his fists, and we will slide them back into the arms. As you can see here, there is a little tab here. That's how you would use to get the fists out. It's just easier for going the opposite way, just to push them on in. Do that here with the other one. And then you want to get his arms totally vertical. Straight down, just exactly like that. Because then next we're going to move them so that they're pointing straight out like so, and we're going to fold down the tray here on his chest. And contrary to belief for some people, this tray is not glass, it is plastic. So no need to worry about breaking that. Then you're also going to reach down here and you're going to fold down his feet. And you're going to rotate the legs here at the knee, so it puts the feet inward. And then we're going to have him do a full splits here, like so. Have you keep up with me. Now, if you look here on the back side of him, you'll see some ridges here that bend. That's where his knees bent. You're going to bend the legs backward, like so, and then rotate them forward, like that. Next, turn him around here to the back side. You'll see this odd red colored gear here in the middle of his back. This raises and lowers the head, so you'll use it to crank his head down. Of course, you can always just push it down with your fingers if you really want to. Then next, we're going to raise the scope up, like so. And then right up here at the black base of it, the scope does fold downward. And lastly, we bring the arms totally straight up and then slide them into the chest. And they will help hold the scope in place. And there we have it. Perceptor's most famous alternate mode, a microscope. Of course, as you can imagine, Perceptor comes from the same toy line in Japan that brought us Soundwave, Blaster, and Megatron. The Microman line, I believe it was, where various objects transformed into humanoid-shaped robots. So, there you go. Although I doubt there's very many households that have a microscope laying around. But then again, you never know. You might have a kid that's into sciences. I wasn't much into science growing up, but I did have a microscope. It's long gone now because I really didn't do much with it. Of course, the microscope knob here on the center of the scope, you can turn it and it will extend and retract the microscope down here. It does have some zoom capability, but not enough to have you going out and winning the Nobel Prize. So it's kind of, this would probably be something of a cheap way to find out if your kid likes science. If they play with this microscope, if they play with this toy one a lot, they might have an interest in looking through the real thing. If not, then I would say don't waste your money, but then again, I'm no parental expert, never claimed to be. Alright, let's get on to the next mode. Start the second alternate mode for Perceptor. We start by removing the knobs on the sides. And next, we take the legs, take the base here of the microscope, and we find these black wheels underneath it. Those wheels are on this same colored bluish plastic, and they pull out a little bit. Just pull it out until it stops coming out. Good thing I got some good thumbnails here. And then next, you're going to rotate the leg at the kneecap all the way around so the wheels that you just pulled out are now facing upward. And then you fold them over up past the central portion. And there you have it. The instructions refer to this as a mobile laboratory. But let's face it here. I mean, you got fake tread detail down here. This looks more like an artillery cannon. I mean, I don't know if it really makes that much sense in a lot of the media or the lore, but I like my definition of it better, being some sort of heavy weapon emplacement instead of a mobile laboratory. Because, I mean, if it's a mobile laboratory, you're really stretching your imagination to figure out how to get things to work. And at the time, a miniaturized lab of this magnitude was a stretch even for the comic books. I'm not even sure if Batman had a miniature crime lab in the Batmobile by then, but yeah, if he's in your home, here's your imagination. What do you think it looks like? Now let's take a look at Perceptor's loose parts. And before we do that, we want to point out a part that you should keep an eye out for on loose samples of the toy, and that's these black panels here at the top of his arms. These shoulder panels here they basically open up when you have him in microscope mode so that the arms can totally fit onto the body. But as you can see, they are just held in by a couple of tabs. Let me see if I can get one of them to come out here for us. Yep, there we go. There we go. We got one of them out. We didn't break it, so that's the even bigger bonus here. As you can imagine, since these are rather thin plastic, at least up here at the top, and it's held on by basically a couple of knobs through a couple of small holes. As you can imagine, somebody improperly transforming him could break these off. So if that's something that means something to you, examine any loose Perceptors that you buy and make sure that he has those pieces. Because if you're picky about that sort of thing, you're going to want to make sure those are there and present. Because you can imagine finding replacements is going to be a pain. Next up, we've got some pieces that aren't listed as loose on his instructions, starting with the actual scope itself. It's basically held on by a couple of different sized knobs, so that way if you do take it off, you can easily replace it back on him. Of course, that gives you a better idea as to how it bends to fit onto him, and it does have this blue part here that can bend and go on either shoulder, depending on how you want to go. As you can imagine, these bars are of a very thin plastic, so I would not recommend removing the scope very often, because you will stress these out and could break them. Piece that's very commonly missing on loose Perceptors are the two silver dials. These are chrome, and they're not bad. I mean, this one over here is a little bit worse. I don't know if it's coming through on the camera or not. These are in pretty good shape, but as you can imagine, they are hard to find. Excuse me for a second. Sorry about that. Apparently a package from China has arrived. Hope my brother appreciates me bringing it in for him. Moving right along now. We have Perceptor's weapon. This is his concussion rifle. And it's not bad. I don't like the fact that the opposite side of this part here, as you can see, it's open and hollow. I really don't like that. That detracts from the look. I mean, you got a small scope up here and what would presumably be an ammunition magazine there. It's not bad looking. And then we have this. This is his missile launcher. And of course, like all the missile launchers at this time period, when Hasbro released them, they are neutered, so the mechanism will not fire, it will only hold the missiles. And as you can see here on the table, we have 3 of these bright red rockets. And they're nothing fancy about them. They're some distance, probably be mistaken for a carrot. They got small fins on here, but they're really too small to get broken or anything. But as you can imagine, these things are of very thin plastic, so they will break very easily too. So be careful finding all these parts. Moving right along now, we will take a look at Perceptor's instructions. This was the new style done up in 1985, where they went with less color. Darn Butterfingers. Then right here we've got a list of the pieces, everything that he came with. And here's how to work the microscope. Claim that magnification is 14 times. Well, like I said, I doubt you're really going to be able to win the Nobel Prize using him. And then how to transform him into the robot. As you can see here, they put the scope over the left shoulder, whereas on the cover it is on the right shoulder. They probably did it this way more to make it easier for you to see the head. While you're doing these instructions, but it's totally up to you how you do it. But I believe just about everybody goes with the right shoulder, especially if you are a fan of the cartoon. And now here we are, how to go with the mobile laboratory. And then now we got instructions for the rub sign, which is on the inside of one of his legs. Save your robot points, 'cause about that time they were starting to put out some very good offers. And of course, how to read your tech specs. So without further ado, that's what we will do now. We'll go with the tech spec. As soon as I can get the static to let it go from the table. There we go. And automatically you could see there's considerable changes from the concept drawing here to the actual final toy. There's a considerable amount of red on this toy, and I think he looks better like this. The addition of the black and putting in more of the black and some more of the blue on there really breaks up the color a little bit. Makes him look a little more colorful. This predominantly uniform red is just, too much red in this world. Speaking of red, there's red background, signify he's an Autobot, even says Autobot above him. It gives his name as Perceptor and lists his function as scientist. His motto is, one's ultimate truth lies in one's molecular structure. That's very fitting. I just had blood drawn today. Let's hope they don't find anything wrong in my molecular structure. Unquestionable thirst for knowledge. Seeks it to exclusion of all else. Main role is to study the best ways the Autobots can adapt to Earth. Extremely smart. Scientific specialties are metallurgy, molecular chemistry, electrical engineering. As microscope has capable of powerful magnification. Lens barrel converts into powerful light cannon. See, that's why I think it's more an artillery piece on the other mode than a mobile lab. Carries concussion rifle in robot mode. Absent-minded. Lenses are his weakest part. So basically, shooting him dead in the chest or up the cannon would probably be fatal to him. Seems a little weird, but okie dokie. Now we lay the grid here. We need the decoder over the grid, and let's take a look at his vitals. It gives his strength as 7, his intelligence is 10, his speed is 2, his endurance is 7, as is his rank, his courage is 8, as is the firepower, and his skill is 10. So Perceptor does come off as being a rather capable warrior, in addition to being one of the smartest Autobots that they had on the team. Now, of course, before we get to my final thoughts, the earlier joke in the video probably warrants some explanation. I know a few of you out there probably know where it came from, but for those of you who don't, we'll have a little bit of a trivia session here. In the current series put out on Machinima, Perceptor here is voiced by Will Wheaton. Yeah, this Will Wheaton. Wesley Crusher from Star Trek The Next Generation. Fittingly, though, on this day, the day this video was posted, was the airing of Star Trek The Next Generation's best episode, in my opinion, that dealt with Wesley, The First Duty. The First Duty featured Wesley involved in an accident at Starfleet Academy, and he and his fellow cadets were trying to cover up the incident. So throughout the episode, he ended up getting a major life lesson. So we also learned a lot more about Captain Picard as well, so that we could all take to heart that while any of us could make a mistake in our life, that mistake does not have to define who we are. So, as anybody could learn from that, we could make a major mistake in our life, and yet we could still grow up to be Jean-Luc Picard. Who'd have thought it? But as another added bit of trivia, the episode The First Duty is required viewing, surprisingly enough, at the United States Air Force Academy, due to the fact that they follow the similar belief that an officer's first duty is to the truth, whether it be scientific truth, historical truth, or personal truth. But as an added bonus, I have here in this magazine, Star Trek, the official starships. This is the ship that Wesley flew in the episode. It wasn't seen, but something interesting for us toy collectors and whatnot is take a look here at the original model of the ship. Get a good look here at the nose. That, for those of you who aren't familiar, that is the symbol of Cobra, the enemy of the G.I. Joe toy line. Apparently, the model maker, Gregory Gine, I hope I pronounced that right, is an avid G.I. Joe fan and slipped that in onto the model, since it would be too small for it to be seen on screen. So, there you go, my friends. Unfortunately, as you can see, the actual production unit that they built, the model that was included with this, instead uses the Starfleet Academy symbol. It's kind of a bummer, but that would have been fun. Now we get down to my thoughts. What do I think of Perceptor? Perceptor is certainly an interesting and very unique toy in the toy line. And I'm glad to see that, while I question Machinima's choice in voice actor, I am glad to see that there is still enough detail done on Perceptor to help be reminiscent of the G1 form. I know they're trying to keep them somewhat in line with their G1 counterparts, with some updates, which is understandable to make them look a lot less dated. But it is nice to see that they are doing something to be a throwback to the original character. Now, as a toy, a lot of us probably didn't like getting Perceptor due to the fact that all he was the science nerd behind the scenes. But in reality, Perceptor does play a major role in a lot of the Transformer media. As he is the scientific brains of the group, they're going to need him to figure out various problems and solve other issues that need a more scientific approach to deal with. Especially when the Decepticons or any other enemies of the Autobots start to play dirty, or if they need other ways to travel into space, or how to adapt the humans to be able to continually help fight the war against the Decepticons. As a toy, this one probably inspired a few kids to pursue sciences, and in reality, that's always a good thing. We're always going to need somebody to study the who, the how, the why things happen the way they do. Whether it be for the controversial issues of global warming and such, or to figure out how we're actually going to get that warp drive that's featured so heavily in Star Trek. Somebody's got to be the brains for it, and if this toy could help encourage the next generation of scientists to go out there for it, then by all means. This one is definitely a top-tier toy, folks. While most won't agree with that notion, I firmly believe he is. The unique function that he brings to the Autobots is one that's very needed. His unique alternate mode, yeah, it's not the best, but it is certainly different, and it does play up well with his function. The added artillery cannon mode, that one's debatable, but it does add a little bit of play value to the toy as well, and what more could we ask for? So, top tier, my friends. And that concludes my review of the Generation 1 Autobot Scientist Perceptor. If you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up here on YouTube. Don't forget as well, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already joined up with us. Please also consider leaving a like on this video and share your thoughts of Perceptor in the comments section down below. This is Sparkster1701. I want to tell you all that next month we're going to do a special theme month. Next month is the release of the movie Rampage, based off of the classic 1980s video game. I was a major fan of that game, and we're going to do 4 guys that we're going to dedicate to Rampage. So please check out Rampage Month, and I will catch you all later.